And we have been talking for the first segment about some issues that I think are in the news. I want to head, Pastor Farag, to some more issues that I think you and I feel are going to be in the news. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but possibly very, very soon. And I have heard you say that you feel Isaiah 17, which is the strike against Damascus, probably by Israel, is on the cusp of happening. Damascus is going to be left uninhabitable. I think you and I feel that could happen very soon with some of their weapons of mass destruction underground. Talk to me a little bit about that.
So it is my belief, and I've long held to the belief that, again, when, not if, this happens, specifically speaking of prophecies such as Isaiah 17 and Ezekiel 38, that when, not if they happen, it will set in motion, because of the unstoppable momentum, other prophecies that will then be fulfilled. So here's an example. And again, this is a plausible scenario that really makes sense. So let's say that Netanyahu's red line gets crossed, which he reiterated very specifically to Putin in his recent meeting. Not to ask for permission, but rather to warn them of what they will do. So if a red line is crossed concerning Syria, then Israel will react and respond very decisively and even immediately. Now, let's say that they do, and then Isaiah 17 happens. Again, it would stand to reason that that would set in motion other prophecies like Ezekiel 38, which I really believe that Isaiah 17 is the catalyst for Ezekiel 38. So when you see how close Isaiah 17 is, then you can also know just how close Ezekiel 38 is.
True. And Isaiah 17, I think that a lot of Saddam Hussein's weapons from back in 2003 and 4 were exported to Damascus, and that's probably where they're being stored. Israel knows that. Look, we've got Iran getting more and more involved, and Pastor Jack Hibbs and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago on air, more and more involved in the Middle East, more and more involved in Syria. I just read a headline the other day where Iran is threatening to come all the way to the border of Israel, the northern border there. Israel is not going to sit around and let this happen, whether or not she just does some limited action or whether or not she's got to go all the way to Damascus. I think it could happen any day, and then set off some sort of a firestorm.
Yes, exactly. And again, ties into this notion of sudden destruction. Mm-hmm. In other words, when that rubber band snaps, that's it.
Yes.
That's it. The birth pains were the warnings, and they were coming in greater frequency and with greater intensity. And you'll forgive the metaphor, but I really believe the world is virtually dilated at a 10, and it's just a matter of time.
Okay. Well, again, and I heard you refer to the reason the Iran deal was such a disaster is I think you feel that nuclear weapons are going to be used in the Gog-Magog battle, correct?
I do believe that on the basis of the 39th chapter of Ezekiel.
Mm-hmm. Which was just one of the reasons why, when that nuclear deal went through in 2014 and 15, most of us were cringing. Personally, I think that's the most disastrous thing that happened under the Obama administration, and I'm troubled that there aren't some efforts to somehow repeal that, and maybe that's down the road. I don't know.
I sure hope so, but I don't believe that it will, and the reason I say that is because God allowed that to happen, because God, who knows the end from the beginning, knew and foretold that this is exactly what would happen at the time of the end. And it is happening, and that has happened. And again, now I know I am repeating myself, but it's just a matter of time. And God, in His mercy and grace, has been giving all of these warning signs of just how close we are.
And some of these events that we're talking about happen perhaps before the rapture. Some happen after the rapture of the church. And frankly, and you and I have discussed this before, the rapture should be one of the primary issues on the minds of Christians. Instead, it's hardly given a thought, and it's partly because the pulpits are hardly giving it a thought as well, which is really tragic because that's possibly something that's going to launch a lot of what we're talking about, or some of these things can happen before that as well. J.D. Farag, and that's who I'm talking to for the hour. He is pastor of Calvary Chapel in Kaneohe, Hawaii. I've had him on before. One of my speakers coming up October the 7th, along with Amir Sarfati, Michelle Bachman, Dr. Mark Hitchcock. We promise to help you understand the times, contend for the faith, become watchmen on the wall. There's no charge. There's no registration needed. You do need to arrive a little bit early. The program starts at 9 a.m. Suggest you come no later than about 8:15 in order to get a seat. The venue holds 4,300 people, but people come from across the country, so we do want you to be able to get in and get a good seat. And we do have some overflow seating arranged for this year. J.D. Farag, I recently saw a headline. It was in the Washington Post, and I had to do a double take. In that it's so late in the hour, why am I surprised this actually transpired? And this was an article posted in the Washington Post. And it literally, even in the headline, it cheered Satan, and it jeered Christians. Satan was cheered, Christians were made fun of. In the article, the Washington Post praised the secular values of Satan. They had sympathy for the devil as a champion of what they called modern culture, science, and secular values. Now, you and I knew that there'd be a day when evil would be called good and good would be called evil, but to have a major publishing organ in the United States of America praising Satan and making fun of Christians, I didn't think I'd live to see it.
This is all part of the plan, and I'll explain what I mean by that. We're told by the Apostle Paul in his letter to the Ephesian church, chapter 6, that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against these principalities and powers of darkness, and he delineates between 4 spiritual entities in high places. I see this as part of Satan's plan to bring division. It reminds me of a rather intense and chaotic account of a very demonic situation, really, that was recorded in the Gospel of Matthew, the 12th chapter. Jesus is being accused of being Beelzebul. I mean, here's God incarnate being called evil, the incarnation of good, all that is good being called evil, as Isaiah says, as you refer to. So he's accused of being Beelzebul, the prince of demons, and they're accusing him because of that, as that being the source of how he's able to cast out demons. So we're told that Jesus knew their thoughts. In other words, they didn't vocalize this, but he read their minds. And this is what he says to them. Very interesting. He says, every kingdom divided against itself will fall or be ruined, destroyed, if you will. And every city or household divided against itself will not stand. In other words, united we stand, but divided we fall. And I would venture to say, and this is hard, but it is, I believe, the reality today, that this division is not just to, from within, bring down this nation, but Satan has been met with a measure of success bringing said division into the church. The gates of hell cannot prevail against the church outwardly. Jesus, in one of the letters to the churches in Revelation, said that Balaam actually succeeded not from without in bringing curse upon Israelites, but from within. He brought the curse upon themselves. How? By seducing them with the Moabite women. So here we are now. And from within, there's this division. And this division is being met, this satanic division is being met with a measure of success. The Apostle Paul, writing to the church in Corinth, said, do not be ignorant of Satan's devices. Well, what is Satan's device? Well, I think one of his most powerful tools is to divide and destroy. we're told that Satan the gates of hell cannot prevail against the church outwardly. However, there's certainly the possibility that there's a division that is brought inwardly. It's really interesting in Revelation chapter 2, the letter to the church in Pergamos or Pergamum. And Jesus says to them, "Nevertheless, I have a few things against you. There are some among you who hold to the teaching of Balaam, who taught Balak to entice the Israelites to sin so that they ate food sacrificed to idols and committed sexual immorality." Well, how did he succeed in bringing this curse, this destruction, this division into the camps of the Israelites? Well, he did it from within, by getting these women to seduce the Israelite men. It wasn't from without. He brought this curse upon them, which he could never do outwardly. It was done inwardly in that way. And I would venture to say that this is the success that Satan is being met with now within not just this nation, but within the Church of Jesus Christ today.